All right, let's move to the NFC South next in this conversation. And we start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in our NFC South. They get Graham Barton, a center I love, in the first round out of Duke. Chris Braswell in the second round, an edge rusher that's had some flashes, had some moments. Tyke Smith in Georgia, safety. A lot of people like Jalen McMillan, a wide receiver out of Washington that fans loved, by the way. Anytime a wide receiver was picked, it got all fire emojis. I really like the Bucky Irving pick, Oregon running back in the fourth round. Like, to me, this was sort of a B draft, Frank. Like, there's a lot here that I think, wow, Graham could turn out, like, taking a center in the first round used to be questionable, not anymore. So, like, I look at a lot of this and say, man, they got guys that in the next couple of years could all turn into somewhat of an important part of the team.
I like it. Solid B. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Barton, great value pick. Really, he's gonna be a good player for them, no doubt about it. I didn't think Braswell was that far behind Dallas Turner, to be honest with you. So I think getting him in the second round, a good value pick there. I like the McMillan pick on the third day. Just good, solid. Jason Licht does a great job with the draft. He did again. Solid B. I think the Buccaneers did a fine job in this draft to kind of just build up. Best player available, whatever fell to them is very solid performance.
Which then brings us alphabetically by nickname to the Atlanta Falcons. I think Atlanta may have given us the most shocking pick I've ever seen in my 7 years covering the draft. I think they may have given us the most questionable draft strategy I have seen in the last 7 years covering the draft. I can't hammer this enough right now today with the information we know with a big enough F. And the reason, and that's rare for me. Like, that is rare for me to fail a team on the draft. But the reason that I failed the Falcons isn't because of these picks. Remember, I wanted Michael Penix Jr. to be the quarterback of the Raiders. Like, I believe in Michael Penix Jr. I do not believe that the Falcons strategy plays to where the Falcons are today. They are in, when you pay Kirk Cousins, who's not a spring chicken, coming off an Achilles, when you pay Kirk, you're in win now mode, right? Like, and these picks, none of these picks reflect win now. These are developmental players that all have questions about certain things, and a quarterback that by the time he sees the field might be 27 years old, like, which is far different than Jordan Love. And I will remind everybody, sit next to Damian Harris. The first thing Dame said on our draft show was, you have just destroyed the locker room. Because now every kid in that locker room, every man in that locker room looks around and says, if you'll do that to our $100 million quarterback, you'll do that to me too, which screams to loyalty. You've also created a situation where a young locker room is going to have to decide, are they more Penix or are they more Kirk Cousins? A city of fans culturally is going to have to decide, are they more Penix or are they more Kirk Cousins? I think we all know the answer to that, right? Like, I think the Michael Penix Jr. pick at 8, I have no problem with. The Michael Penix Jr. pick to the Atlanta Falcons after paying Kirk Cousins without informing Kirk Cousins from day one of what you're doing splits this locker room in a way that absolutely gets this an F.
I get the Falcons a D because let me put it to you this way. I like the idea of being a little creative at quarterback. This is by far the most valuable position in the NFL, most valuable position in all sports, we could argue. So thinking outside the box to me is not that bad of an idea. You say, this position is so important. Why don't you double up? Why don't you build for the future while building for the present? There's a reason Kirk Cousins got $180 million. It's because quarterback is so valuable. But we talked about nuance, and there's so much nuance to this particular pick. Like you said, Michael Penix is not a young guy. He could be 27, as you said, before he even starts a game for the Falcons. Organizationally, it doesn't make sense to give Kirk Cousins $180 million and then go draft a quarterback number 8. You knew Michael Penix was going to be there at number 8. Like, you knew that. Like, everybody in the world knew Michael Penix Jr. was going to be available at number 8. Aren't you thinking ahead on this? Did it really take you that long into your entire offseason process to figure out, oh, yeah, we really, really like Michael Penix? I don't give them an F because I like Michael Penix as a player, but it just, everything else about the pick, even the fact that...
Let me say something to that real quick. You mentioned they knew Penix was going to be there at 8. I want to double down on that. They knew every pick that was going to go before Penix. If you, like, every team runs simulations, and they run thousands of them on a computer to figure out who's going to be available. When you think of the 7 players selected before Michael Penix Jr., any simulation in the world would have given you some version of that. It was not shocking for Marvin Harrison Jr. to go at 4. It was not shocking for Malik Neighbors to go at 5 and already be off of this, or Joe Alt to go at 5, I should say. Right. Malik Neighbors at 6. It was not shocking for J.C. Latham to go at 7. None of that was unpredictable. So they ended up with one of the most predictable outcomes when they got to 8, which speaks to the fact that they should have known weeks ago that this was a possibility. And if that is a possibility, then inform your people so that nobody is shocked and you can handle it behind the scenes the right way.
And now they might have been worried about Kirk Cousins letting the cat out of the bag, and somebody like the Raiders moves up to 7 because they know, oh, he ain't getting past 8. So I kind of get that, I guess. But yes, I agree that you should at least let your guy know. Don't blindside him with this. And a couple more things with this. This isn't an Aaron Rodgers situation. Everybody compares this to Aaron Rodgers. Oh, yeah. Aaron Rodgers could have been the number 1 pick in that draft. It fell to 24. The Packers looked around and said, we didn't plan on this. Wow, what we got to pick him. It's just too good a value right here. I don't think you could say that about Michael Penix. Even if I like him as a player, nobody in the world had him as the 8th best player in this draft. Nobody. It was something that they knew when the draft started. We are picking Michael Penix number 8 for every reason you said. First 7 picks are very predictable. They knew they were reaching on Michael Penix. This wasn't an Aaron Rodgers situation where the Packers, Ted Thompson back then, said, we didn't expect this, but we got to do it. It's such a good value. So this is not a perfect comp. And also, one more thing I want to add. James Palmer, formerly NFL Network, really, really good reporter, said 3 teams, including your Raiders, were trying to trade up into the top 10 to get Michael Penix. So the Falcons theoretically could have traded down with somebody like the Raiders at 13 or the Seahawks at 16. Ended up getting Dallas Turner, a guy the Vikings love enough to trade basically 6 picks for. Fill your biggest need, which is edge rusher. Edge rusher has been their biggest need for 3-4 years now, at least. How much differently would we be talking about the Atlanta Falcons right now if they would have traded the 8th pick to move back to 13, let's say at the Raiders? Raiders draft Penix, whatever. At 13, the Falcons draft Dallas Turner and get extra picks for the future. We would have been like, this is an A, best draft of the division. Way to go. You're built to win now. You just got your edge rusher. They passed on. There's an opportunity cost with that they passed on. So everything about this specific pick of Penix at 8, I don't mind being out of the box at quarterback. Everything about this specific pick at Penix at 8 leads me to believe this was a mistake, and that's why I gave him a D.
Yeah, by the way, Palmer, you're right, does very good work reporting. I also think teams are full of it when it comes to post-draft and they're getting killed. I remember a few years ago when the Raiders stunningly drafted Mike Mitchell early in the draft. And Mike Mayock didn't even know who he was. Nobody had any B-roll on him. Nobody what to do. And then a day later, it was like, no, several teams were trying to trade up to get Mike Mitchell. No, they weren't. Like, who is really trying? You think all these teams were trying to trade up and they were going to trade up into Atlanta's spot? That only makes the pick look worse. Were they trying to trade up with the Titans or with the Chargers and you think they turned down those trade ups? Like, none of that makes sense. If you follow the logic of where that leak comes from the Falcons trying to justify a bad pick.
Sure, that could be.
I think it's an F. All right. So, and by the way, by far to me, the worst draft in this year's draft in the NFL. Carolina is next up. And Carolina takes Xavier Legette. We learned it was Legette by day 2 of the draft.
Legette. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
No idea. I've for years, I've read his highlights in South Carolina, and it's always been Legette. But Legette, he informs us it is an introductory press conference. So Legette, they get Jonathan Brooks, arguably the best running back in this class. They get Trayvon Wallace, the Kentucky linebacker in the 3rd round, one of the best linebackers in this year's draft. Like, quietly, I think this felt like a B draft for Carolina. Is Carolina still just a bad football team? Yes. Is their owner just an absolute piece of Yes. But is the organization in a better situation today than they were pre-draft? Yes.
I gave it a B- for the Panthers. I'm not really sold on Legette as a guy in the 1st round. Really 1 year in his college career. Great year. And he shows a lot of tape, but the lack of consistent production just makes me a little weary about that. I think a 2nd round pick on a running back coming off an ACL for a team that won 2 games last year, I don't love that either, but I get it. He helps Bryce Young out, takes a little bit of pressure off of him. Jatavian Sanders is a guy I really did like, the tight end. I thought that was a good value pick. It wasn't bad. There's nothing bad about this Panthers draft. It's just some of the specific player fits I didn't love. That's why I gave it a B-. As dumb as it sounds, if the Cowboys draft Brooks at 46, I would have been over the moon over that. That's a perfect pick. You traded up. You drafted Jonathan Brooks. You take the chance on him being healthy with the ACL. The Panthers made the exact same move, and I'm like, I don't love that. And I think everybody can understand the nuance there. That's why I gave the Panthers a B-, just because some of their picks I just didn't love for the spots that they took him in, but not bad. And they helped, they have to build up around Bryce Young. They did him so wrong last year by putting that crew out on offense around him, by helping him with 3 of their first 4 picks in this draft. That is noteworthy, but still, I just ultimately give them a B-.
Sneaky good draft to me for New Orleans. I give them a B. In the first round, they take Talise Fuanga. By the way, if you watch the NFL Network, he did tell everybody there it is Fuanga, like Tua Tagovailoa.
You are really giving me a lot of I spent a lot of time looking up pronunciations, and I should have just called you.
No, I thought it was Fuaga, and then that's how I've been talking to him the whole time. But then the NFL Network, one of the commentators said Fuanga in an interview, and his face lit up. He was so excited, and he's like, "Yes, finally, somebody gets it right. The N is there." Polynesian pronunciation. Talise Fuanga. A mauler on the offensive line, a guy that, frankly, I coveted for my favorite team. Just an absolute, I think he's a great pick for them on the offensive line. Kool-Aid McKinstry, somebody that injury issues are why he was even still there in the second round. If his foot is fine, also some concussion stuff. I think that pick makes a ton of sense. And Spencer Rattler, not for nothing in the 5th round, like you're getting a guy that has all the tools. So now he sits behind Derek Carr. You're invested in Derek Carr. So let's see if over a little bit of time, Rattler can actually develop. I like this. It felt like a B draft to me. Felt like a good one.
I gave the Saints a C-. Honestly, I didn't love their draft. Fuanga is a good, solid player, and he fills a need for them. I like that pick. But after that, didn't really love anything else. Kool-Aid McKinstry, there's questions about his ceiling as a player, questions about his health. He's kind of redundant with Lattimore. What are you going to trade him now? Like that doesn't really vibe with me. So I didn't love that pick, but it would have been fine if you don't go from 41 to 150 in the draft without a pick. Now you get the 150 and draft Spencer Rattler, and there's a quarterback desperate league. There's a reason he's around in the 5th round, right? Like, I get it. They're the tools, and we think back to that freshman year when he was a breakout guy. He really didn't do much after that. Don't hate the pick necessarily, but when that's your 3rd pick of the draft, I just didn't love this class. I give it a C-, although Fuanga is going to be a good player for them. I don't think there's much question about that. That was a good pick. I just have questions about the rest of their draft.
I am curious why I went, when you made your grade. I don't know why that was the appropriate physical reaction. So we agree the Falcons are the worst. Is that who was the best in this division? Was that the Bucs?
Yeah, I think it's to me, it's the Bucs. I just think they had a good, solid draft. I don't really have many questions about what they did or how they got there. They just kind of played the draft like they usually do, got good, solid quality. I think the Bucs is the best, and the Falcons have to be the worst.
Yeah, the draft grades on this division are much like the division going into the season, kind of meh.